So the next talk will be by Andrea Anton. Andrea, are you here? Hello. Yes,
Hello.
sorry, I saw you were in the not the correct list, and I could not put you as a panelist. So, hello, Andrea.
Okay. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. So, it's really a pleasure to have Andrea with us. Andrea was at KAUST a few years back and doing a scientific research, but in parallel, she started to be interested in the problem of gender differences. And she has published a really nice paper on that about women in the behavior of women in conferences. And today she accepted to talk a little bit more about this topic. And we are really happy and fortunate to have her sharing her finding with us. So when you're ready, can you share your screen?
Yes. Okay, can you see it as in presentation mode?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me to Weiser. I enjoyed yesterday very much the talks from all these scientists from around the world and sharing their trajectories and their perspectives and insights along their journeys. And it is also very exciting for me to be here presenting at KAUST because I live there and I still have a lot big ties with KAUST. So I'm a marine biologist. I spent most of my career, my scientific career abroad. I did my master's and PhD in the United States. And then I took a career break and had 2 children also abroad. And then I went to KAUST and I worked there as a postdoctoral researcher in KAUST at the Red Sea Research Center. And then now I work in the Spanish Research Council. I'm back in Spain. But and I work, my areas of expertise are global warming and invasive species. But for this talk, I wanted to talk about something that was mentioned in the presentation, something that was sparked at KAUST with 2 colleagues, Dr. Maria Calleja, which is a senior researcher in the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry in Germany, and Dr. Francisca Garcia, which is currently a research scientist at KAUST. She recently came back, but she was a postdoc at KAUST when I was there. So in a conversation, just a conversation among friends and colleagues, we were talking about how hard it was for us to ask questions at seminars and specifically at conferences. I don't know, something was intimidating, and even if we had a question that we wanted an answer, or we were very curious about something, I think I can speak about myself. I'm usually curious, and at these conferences I always end up with like questions on my head. But we said like sometimes we don't ask, and we didn't know why, because at least 2 of us we didn't consider ourselves as being particularly shy. So we look at the literature and try to find if there were any studies done on this, on women participating in seminars after the seminar in these conversations less than men, and we couldn't find the data. So we decided to take our own data. We were going, especially at KAUST, it's very easy to go to seminars. Conferences are organized there, and we were like, okay, this is easy. After the seminars, we can see how many questions are asked, and if there are more questions asked by men than women. One thing also that we noticed is that men were more comfortable and seemed more relaxed asking questions, including younger colleagues. So, and yes, we ended up with this exercise, we ended up writing an opinion article in a non-peer review journal. This was it had an editor. It was a fun exercise for us because we although the three of us, we published, we never had an opinion article, which was a little bit out of our elements, but we had some data, so we were not totally uncomfortable. Well, so this is how we collected the data. We went to seminars and also conferences, and then wait for the question and answer section, and then start taking our notes on who was asking questions and identifying if it was a male or a female. We did this in 3 major research institutions, at KAUST, but also at the University of Exeter in the UK, where Paki moved after KAUST, and at the University of New England in the US. Yes, as I said, we got the gender of the questioners, and also we quantified the amount of the amount of women and men in the audience. For the small seminars, we counted everybody, and for the really large ones, we counted a subset, and then we extrapolated to the big room. And we did this for 73 seminars in the fields of biology and chemistry between 2016 and 2018. Okay, and this is the raw data. In the x-axis is the number of seminars. So it's like the data that we got for each seminar, and in blue is represented the percent male questions, and in pink or red represented the percent female questions in a scale from 0 to 100. So the first thing is that blue dominates the graph. There are more questions coming from men in the room. The second thing is that a lot of these seminars, the questions and answers were completely, I didn't say dominated, but run by the men in the audience. Only men were asking questions, so this is why we get all these blues on top. And the other thing that is interesting and is a little surprising too is that none of these seminars had 100% all the questions asked by women. Okay, so we put this data together, and we got that 70% of the questions on average were asked by men, and 25% were asked by females. We also counted the audience, because this data is without taking into account how many men and female are in the audience, because it is actually, this graph would be normal if only 20% of the audience were female. So then there would be a balance of questions, but we found that the audience were on average 50% male and 45% female. So then when we corrected for this audience, this 75% moved to 73% on average questions by men, and the female percentage moved a little bit higher to 27%. So at the time we were writing the opinion article, we ran into this paper by Carter. This was a paper published in PLOS Biology. And it was a similar paper as the one that we were writing. Our paper didn't have much data. This paper has a lot of data. They went to seminars. They didn't go to conferences, only to seminars, but they did this in 10 countries and in 37 institutions within those countries. They measure question and answers, and then they measure the gender of the people that they were asking, and their response is in the title, women ask fewer questions than men, and they found a ratio that was this was exciting, a ratio that was very similar to ours. So they reported that they were 2.6 chances that a man were going to ask a question as compared to a woman with a 1. So 2.6 to 1 odds. And ours was 2.7. So we were very close on our average. But it was also exciting to see this on this paper by Carter et al., that they also asked in the seminars when people were leaving, they had a questionnaire. And then they asked, the first question was, did you have an answer that you wanted to mention after the seminar, but you didn't. And if the answer was yes, then they asked them to write the reasons why that was the case. So what they did, these were the reasons. One was they didn't work up the nerve. The other one was the speaker was an eminence. The other one was it was not my field, and I didn't feel probably qualified. I'm not clever enough, I assume, to ask questions. I think I misunderstood some parts of the talk, and I didn't find appropriate my question. And they gave a ranking from 1, considering it very unimportant, to 5, considering very important as a reason that preventing them from asking a question. Now, in blue are represented, the dots are responses by a woman, and in orange are responses by men. And focus on the dots, not on the triangles. That this is the data that I'm talking about now. And one thing, I'm not sure if you can see the cursor, but women are always a little higher on their responses. So they consider these reasons more important than men do. And there's also 2 of them in which these 2 dots between men and women, they separate a little bit, and there's a bigger difference. The first one is I could not work up the nerve. So the women, they are unable to kind of like, they feel too stressed or inhibited or nervous, and then they cannot ask this question. And the second one is a little hard to swallow. That is, women were reported that they were not feeling that they were clever enough to ask their questions. Okay, so here is another publication that was published at the same time that we released our opinion article, and we were not aware of this publication when we were doing this. This one is focusing on conferences. So they did the same. They went to conferences in the American Society of Human Genetics and in the conferences of biology of genomes, and they took data in 2015, 16, 17, and 18, okay? And then they took notes, like we did, in the same fashion, on who was asking and what was the gender. And here are some of their results. I'm not going to talk about all these categories because they were recording this in the different sessions and etc. But for instance, I'm going to talk about this one. The plenary sessions in big conferences are where the keynote speakers are giving their talks. Everybody goes to these sessions, and here indicated in dots is the percentage, the ratio between males and females attending the plenary, which it was close to 50% females, 50% males. So in these plenary sessions, the questions were 20% by women and 80% by men. On the other sessions, some of them, they are higher, but most of them except one, they are below what you would expect as in equilibrium with the amount of women in the room. So coming back to our opinion article, and this is the graph that we had in our opinion article. Here we reported our data is 73 versus 27 for participation in questions. And one of the things that we wonder, the 3 of us, is like, when does this start? When do girls or women start feeling inhibited to speak up in these public forums or academic forums? So we ran into this paper by Okrus that she published in 2008, and she did it in schools in Norway. So it's just one study But it actually fit with the way we took the data, because she was in the classes and she was recording the participation of kids in different grades and at different ages. And when they were 6, the kids, it was similar setting to what you would have in a conference. The kids could ask or could participate voluntarily in conversations, which that was very important, that it needs to be something voluntary, not the teacher asking questions, but just like they could, they had like these spaces where they could voluntarily speak, no? So when at 6, it was 50% conversational participations between boys and girls. Then it was at 8 years and 11 years around that 50%. It was a little bit of a gap, but then at 14, it became this gap is bigger. And it's similar to that one that you'd encounter at the PhD level in academic conferences. So it seems like, I mean, again, it's only one study and it's only in Norway, but based on this, it is worrisome to think that this may start very early on in a school. And also, I'm not sure if I'm getting a message from the conference.
No. I think everything is fine. You can continue.
Okay. And the other thing that was a little bit worrisome for us is that this seems to be maintained to the highest level of education, which you think that this gap would narrow at that level, but it isn't. So my reflections for this talk is that one may wonder, why is this important that you know, feel comfortable to speak up and to ask questions when you have them. And this could advance scientific careers because increases your visibility. It also can give you esteem among your colleagues. Also, and this is important, you can incorporate new insights into your own research by getting your questions solved by colleagues that work on the same field. Also, you can start collaborations this way. You can develop your networking career and many other things. Also, other areas that we thought of that this may have an impact, but these things are not recorded because they are usually private meetings, is, for instance, on faculty meetings. We wonder if women participation is also unbalanced with the number of women that there are on those rooms, and also at job interviews. These are just examples, like when women are doing job interviews, they may be less willing to ask questions that are pertinent for the job and are important for them than men. So asking questions is voluntary. So this is quite a subtle and complex matter, because it's not being imposed, it's just voluntary. But it appears to be quite widespread from the data that we have in hand. And one question that we were asked by the editor of the journal, it was, what can be done? What can we do? And at the time we wrote it, we weren't sure what could be done. But this paper is the same one that I mentioned, was published at the same time. We weren't aware of this. But now, after this, I think I have a strong answer for what can be done. So in 2015, they measured this woman participation in questions and answers in this conference, one of the sessions in the genetic conferences that I was talking about. They measured the data, and they were, the women that they were doing this survey, they were surprised and they were a little upset, and they wanted to share this with one of the sessions. So they shared their data in that session, and they recorded before and after disclosing their data, And the number moved from 12 out of like, if they had a 30% woman in the audience, only 12% of the questions were coming from women. But after showing what the data was reflecting, then women were more participative. No? So what can be done? Well, awareness. Awareness can reverse the trend. And that's what they are showing, that if women are aware of this, then they can act upon it, at least in scientific conferences and seminars. And also, they found that this trend was persistent, which is great. So they measured in 2015 and then 17, 18, well, they went until 18, and they saw that this intervention had an effect for at least those 3 years, which is great news. So my take-home message, and this is why I'm focusing on this topic for this presentation, that I want to raise awareness of this. So I want to say that it's important to work up the nerve as much as you can when you have a question, and just think that you are clever enough, and let's get equal voice in academic forums. And this
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much. It was really inspiring and open-minded, at least for me. Do we have any question from the audience for Andrea? No question? Okay, then I will start. So you have made this again. There are two aspects in your talk. The first one is that it's on a really small sample, I would say, because it's just a few studies in separated areas and so on. So my first question is, are you aware, or do you know now that you have more experience in this field? This is a field where people are investigating more, or do we need more data, or is it in progress?
So I think there are, well, I didn't mention another two studies. So it is a field, and all of them were, the research was happening in the same years. So I think, yes, probably there is another papers that they will be published soon. So preparing this talk, I do for my research, I do meta-analysis, which is putting literature together and then looking trends. And I actually thought, I was like, oh, this is starting to look good. There is not enough data, but I thought about doing a little meta-analysis for this talk. So putting the data that I had together and then maybe present a more robust trend. And I told my husband about that, and he said, what, are you crazy now? You're doing analysis on this? So I didn't do it, but I think it's starting to have enough data to look at trends. So maybe it's just a question of waiting for a few years to have enough results. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is important to confirm the result with more data for sure. And my second question is that, okay, no, there is a question from the audience. So my question after.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Well, I'll give you a little bit of my background because I think it's a little bit important. I did my undergrad in electrical engineering and my master's in electrical engineering. So it's a mainly dominated men career. And sometimes I kind of felt that I couldn't talk in some of the meetings, even like if they were small meetings. And sometimes like even our supervisor at that moment, she once I questioned one of the guys, and it was like a very direct question, and it could be upsetting for him, and she kind of like felt bad and kind of diminished my question, like kind of made it look like less important. But I think that I really loved the way you say that it's important to actually say these things, like kind of share it with other people, kind of like acknowledge that this is an issue. And something that I wanted to add is like we should also empower ourselves, like help each other out. And when we are in these kind of situations, we can also help each other instead of like pushing each other down. But like I really like the way that you like your previous slides, where you said all of the like the things that we can do about it is really, really, really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Okay, so I have another question, because this I think was interesting in your thoughts. So it's not science, it's your perception. You mentioned that if you refrain of asking question or if women ask less question in conferences, then they are lowering their chance of more interaction. So basically, they are hindering their career. Do we have data on that to show how is this important to ask question in conferences, or is just your personal opinion?
Well, yeah, it's my opinion, and it is also the discussion points on these other papers. So it is data on that. I don't think so. It is just something that needs further exploration. So in the introductions and mainly in the discussions on these papers, yes, they mentioned that this could be affecting careers, but no, I don't have data on that.
So we need to wait for the data. But this is really interesting point. At least we are thinking about that now. I'm sure I will think more about this aspect in the future. So thank you very much. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.